Hi, I'm Tina Kakadelis for Film Obsessive, and I'm thrilled to talk with you guys. How's it going?
Doing
It is
great. It's nice to meet
very
you over
well.
Awesome. So my first question, I just want to go back in time. What was your first memory of a martial arts movie that just like really took your breath away and made you excited about the genre?
Go down.
You know, my first memory was a Shaw Brothers movie called Five Element Ninjas,
Okay.
where there is earth, fire, water, gold, and water. And it's a very silly slapstick Shaw Brothers thing. But I was a big Marx Brothers fan as a young child. So it was sort of, to me, the Kung Fu version of the Marx Brothers.
Very nice. Shannon?
All right. She probably got me trumped there, but anyway, I think my first movies that I really fell in love with martial art movies on it was Iron Monkey or Fist of Legend. And I'd watched so many martial art movies, but when I got to suddenly start working on them, it was just magical. And I then was determined that one day when I left the studio world, I would actually make a martial art movie. And I've made movies that have little sequences in them, but now we've made four. So it's been a fun adventure to bring to life.
Yeah, I was
Can
gonna
I add
say,
one sentence to that? Iron Monkey also, which Miramax had acquired to distribute. When I saw that, everything changed because what Donnie Yen does in that finale, fighting on the phone poles, made me want more than anything else. And when we made our next Highlander movie, I found Donnie Yen in Hong Kong and put him in the movie because of Iron Monkey.
that's awesome. So how did Tiger Style Media come into play? How did you two come together to make these four films?
Well, we go back for years to studio days. We both worked at a little company called Miramax Films and Dimension Films, so we knew each other for a long time. And Dan had been thinking of the slate and working on the slate and approached me about partnering on the slate. And I had worked on so many martial art movies at Miramax and then launched the label called Dragon Dynasty. So I was well versed in martial art movies. And when he explained what he thought about doing English language martial art, I was like, game on, I get it. And I'll let him tell you what really was a genesis from thinking that English language martial art movies needed to be made.
Mine dates probably 10 or 20 years even earlier. I was working at a martial arts cable channel that was a movie channel and needed and acquired hundreds of movies, both English language direct to video ones made in America and lots of Hong Kong ones. And I had the opportunity to put them on in 75 countries and see how they did. And I saw how the English language ones would beat the famous ones every time in every country. SD versions of American movies beating HD famous Hong Kong ones. And it hit me, people love these movies. And without video stores where we used to make them for the video stores, no one was making these anymore. And it seemed to me like they should be made with a little bit of a modern sensibility, but made in English with English speaking leads.
And now, either of you practice martial arts? Or
I used to be a boxer, so that's as close to martial arts as I get, but I used to be a boxer. Once I started having kids, I kind of left the boxing world a little bit. Still work out a little bit in it, but kind of quit fighting and sparring, so to speak.
Yeah, I did not either, other than a student of the film part of it. But what we you quickly learn is the martial arts in movies is closer to gymnastics than anything because the whole trick is not to beat up the other person, but to look like you did. And that's not an easy thing to be able to do.
yeah.
It's
So
a
these
skill.
four films, you've got Kung Fu Games, Art of Eight Limbs, The Lockdown, and Lady Scorpions. And Dan, you had a hand in writing them. So can you just walk me through the inspiration for these four films? Because they are connected by martial arts, but they're very different stories that take you to different parts of the world as well.
Well, I wanted four standalone movies rather than sequels or an episodic thing. And I sub put them into categories. One was a prison tournament one was a strong female buddy picture, a grandmother, daughter, granddaughter one. Another was I wanted to do an homage to my favorite iconic scenes. I also am a news junkie. So when I read the story of how the Syrians gassed their own people and then had their nerve weapons taken away from them, it occurred to me, what would happen if a couple of them disappeared when they were taking them away, the Russians and the Americans, and what could happen? So that was the inspiration for the first one. Fred Weintraub, also a famous kung fu producer who discovered American Bruce Lee, was a friend of mine. So it was a little bit of an homage to Fred. I wanted a President Tournament one. I worked with Cynthia Rothrock and had promised her I'd develop something for her. That sort of covers them. So they were all ideas that came from different places.
Very nice. And some of them take place in Asia. Were you shooting on location? Did the crew get to travel out there? What was the location scouting process like?
Well, it was interesting because we started pre-production was all done for us in LA. So we would get location stills and kind of look at them. I hired a production service company in Thailand. So we shot the first two movies that we made, Art of Eight Limbs and The Lockdown in Thailand, and we went back to back. So we hired crew from there and cast from there, and our stunt team was from there. And a lot of the desire to go to Thailand. Dan had been there before. We wanted to go because he was some of the world's greatest martial artists, and we got to work with the great Sang Kawi, who's our stunt choreographer on both those movies, and he did Ong Bak and Chocolat, and to name just a few. But so he really comes with a very skilled and wonderful team, and so the people that you see fighting, Ludi Lin and Katie Lotz and Leo Howard, those are all people from his team for the most part. We went out and had audition and cast some other people, but it's people he works with a lot. And I think the continuity of some of the movies is that we were able to put some of the fighters in both movies. So that was fun. So you got try and change their look up and all of that. But then it became a second hand between all of us because we were used to working together, and it was a blast to do that there. And then the other two we did in Mexico, and we shot there. And I think that's where we actually see also some more repeat in the thread of some of our actor stunt people who got to be in a couple of the movies. And that was fun to then, again, like it just becomes kind of a science where you work together, you know how each other are going to react and what their stunts are like and all of that. So it was fun to do that.
My history with Thailand goes back a little further. In 2004 and 5, had done a couple 4-hour miniseries there. One was a big pirate Blackbeard one, and one was Jules Verne's Mysterious Island, which was a Ray Harryhausen giant insect movie. So I had worked with the Thai crews and seen how great they were. I had worked with this stunt team and kept my friendships up with them. And I'd seen how beautiful Thailand is. So my number one goal on this entire project was to go back and make more movies in Thailand. And that's just what we did. And I think we did a good job of making the country one of the characters in these because it's a very photogenic place.
Definitely, yeah. The some of the shots in The Lockdown when the siblings are exploring the city are just, man, it just makes you want to get on a plane and fly over there. But with these fight heavy movies, what is the pre-production like? What is the length of, I guess, from start to finish? Because I imagine the choreography and the training and everything takes a lot longer than a lot of other movies.
Well, there's the pre-production when you get all of your crew kind of in there and getting ready, and that's generally about 6 weeks, anywhere 4 to 6 weeks, depending on what the people do. But there's a pre-production where you're identifying and beginning to talk about what the fight scenes will look like with Sang and his team. But our actors, we had them go over one to train and work with Sang and his team for the minimum was 2 weeks. And and not just working and training there, the Thailand weather is very different than at least California where we live. I mean, it's 100 degrees and 99.9% humidity. So at the same time, they had to learn all their fights. They had to acclimate to the heat as well, which takes a little time. But so they were minimum 2 weeks, probably 2.5 weeks for a couple of them. So Leo, Katie, and Ludi all went and trained for that time ahead of when they had to start shooting. And it gives you, they then know the fighters, and by the time you make it to you're shooting it, they've got it all down. There's always things that come up on the day and the camera movements and all of that, but they know each other well, and it makes for a believable fight sequence and an exciting one. And to tout Leo, said he's never had an actor who's performed so well at martial arts. And Leo's a black belt in a few things, but that doesn't mean that as a stunt person slash stunt actor that you know how to do that. And he landed it, was perfect every time. And so Sang was so incredibly proud. And same thing with Katie. Like, she is parkour, she is many styles of martial arts that she's trained some before, but not, she doesn't do that day in, day out. She did a lot of her own stunts on, her DC show, but she was great and fearless. And Ludi had done a lot more training. He'd actually trained in Thailand years before we found out. And great job as well, just getting in there and being fearless and working with the other stunt people to make it come to life.
Now I'm going to answer it a little more technically.
Okay.
So I had done a lot of research for these. So I had handpicked certain kicks that I wanted to make sure. A tornado sweeping kick, and a Sanchai is one of the most famous real Muay Thai fighters, who does a famous cartwheel kick. So I met first with the stunt team and said, I want to make sure you have these things in them. They would do something called a previs, where they would shoot with their phones with incredible speed their version of what they thought we wanted. And they'd edit it on the spot and they'd show it to us. And then we would say more of this, less of that. And when we all agreed what it would be, then they would start training the actors on these things. So we had a pretty good idea going into the training exactly what we wanted.
Yeah.
One thing worth noting, in the lockdown movie, Leo could do this spinning kick where he does about a 720 spin in the air. It looks like wire work. It is not. Leo could do this. And we said, if you could do that kick, we will put it in the movie. And you'll see it when you see the movie if you haven't, because it's a really spectacular, looks like wire work.
Yeah, all of the stunts. I watched all four, and I think the lockdown really stood out to me because I knew Katie from the DC shows, and I was very curious how it would translate. But you bring up something, having particular moves that you're very interested in putting in the movies. Was there did you know which movie they were going to go into beforehand? Like, is there a different style of fighting that you felt better summed up the themes of Kung Fu games versus the lockdown?
Well, the two in Thailand were both ring movies where they are fighting at a boxing ring. So it had to be moves that worked in the context of a real fight. Kung Fu Games was completely different. I literally said, what are the most famous things everyone would know? The bamboo forest from not just Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, but House of Flying Daggers and 5 others. I wanted to have the Bruce Lee yellow suit nunchuck fight. I wanted to have the Hammer Girl subway car fight from The Raid 2. I wanted to have a tea room like in Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. So those to me were the most iconic things. And I wanted to have a Shaw Brothers slapstick. And I went back to my favorite movie of Five Element Ninjas. And I have to say that production designer in Mexico did us proud, because I was very specific what I wanted, but he delivered beyond. And the sets he built were just gorgeous and really sold what we were trying to push of homage to the original. I think the Shaw Brothers, you can't tell the difference between the original and what we did. And it's just because of our love for what they did and trying to bring it. Not everybody knows the Shaw Brothers anymore, and they should, if you're a younger person.
That was the one, after doing 3 others, we really wanted to homage some of our favorite movies so that people would, if they watch these, the younger generation especially, well, what are these inspired by? And maybe they'll go back and watch some of those wonderful oldies but goldies.
There's also a little bit of the Warriors in there, where they're all in the silly, the kempo and the different costumes. Where I took a little.
That kind of leads me to my question about the cast, because you do have this really wonderful mix of very storied martial arts actors who have a long career in the martial arts genre. But then you also have people like Katie who are most known for more current superhero things, and then people who are just stunt actors who are now getting to fully act. So how did that come to be? How did you make those calls, and who are you so excited that you got to bring on?
I mean, every person that's in the movie we're excited we got to bring on, but the casting process was pretty arduous on every movie because you really had to have someone who could act and could also do their stunts. So I went through, and it's not like there's a site or a casting director is like, I specialize in doing this. So it really came down to me and some of my team that have worked with me for a long time, where we're scouring everywhere and literally under every rock looking for the right actors that could also do martial arts and also hope that their schedules would work with the timing. And so the people that we did bring on who have not really acted before, like Jade Zhu and Caitlin, they had to audition. So I would go down my rabbit hole looking at things. And like Caitlin, for example, she's been in Wonder Woman and many other great giant big TV shows and movies. And I kept finding a bunch of footage on her. And then I saw a short that she did with my friend King Batch, and she was so funny. So after watching this little short, I was like, all right, I'm going to find this young woman and we'll see if she's really interested in acting or if that was just kind of thing that she did for a friend. And she was interested in acting. So we had her read and thought that it would work and got her on with our director of the first movie, which is Lady Scorpion. She was in Bruce, and felt that she had what it takes. And she is probably one of the most decorated martial artists ever in the history of martial arts. So she and Cynthia like share in that legend of women who are, legendary martial artists turned actresses. And Caitlin's got two movies with us, and I think she's got a bright future ahead of us, and no one more agile and also just willing to do whatever it is it takes. But that's how we found her. And Jade Zhu had been in a bunch of other giant movies as well. She's who fights Scarlett Johansson in The Black Widow. And I was watching all her videos and wasn't sure she's born in China, raised in Italy, and I wasn't sure how her English was going to be. So I was like, once I drilled down and after trying to get in touch with her, finally got her and talked to her and then had her do an audition. And I knew there's no question that she could do whatever we needed her to do. And I think she delivers. I think her performance is magnificent in that it's, for her, the world has got a wonderful discovery in Jade Zhu with a speaking role. And then, like with Leo, it was actually kind of humorous. His agent that he had just signed with didn't even know that he could do the martial arts. So it kind of brought that to his attention. But anyway, so it was just fun to get him to bring back, like he'd been doing other acting, but he hadn't done much of the martial arts on camera in a while. So lucky for us, he practices it every day. So he was kind of ready. So, but I think we've got a lot of, in Thailand, Grace Varanth that's another person who has been acting and doing some martial arts and fighting. And, we auditioned tons of women to play that role to be opposite Ludi. And she was the winner. She's beautiful, a good actress, and scares the daylights out of most men. So there we have Grace Varanth.
What more do you need? All right, I think that's all of my time. So thank you both for your time, and
Can I say
excited.
a good word for one other actor? And Shannon really is gifted at finding these people. Mark Strange is a British actor who fought in Ip Man under Wu Ping. He fought with Jackie Chan in The Medallion. He fit us in before he went off to do Deadpool and Wolverine. And he was just a gem of a good actor and a great martial artist and a treat to work with, as were everybody. But he was a particular friend for life that was great to work with.
Awesome. That's so great. Congrats on the four movies, and
Thank
I'm
you.
excited for the future of martial arts genres.
All right.
Well,
Well,
thank
thank you
you.
so much. Have a great rest of your interview
Did
day.
you have a favorite?
I'm always partial to a bunch of strangers getting put in a scenario together and they don't know why they're there. So Kung Fu Games won my heart.
I'm glad
All
I
right.
asked you.
Yeah.
Thank
Excellent.
you.
Thank you guys.